Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're taking a close look at Brazil, a nation really in constant motion. We're drawing insights from the Brazil Daily Report, dated August 17, 2025. Our mission here is to pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge, the surprising facts from all the latest political, economic, and cultural stuff happening down there. Basically a shortcut for you to get truly well informed. Thanks for listening to this deep dive. Like and subscribe to our channel.
It's a great focus because Brazil really is, well, dynamic isn't quite the word. Things shift so fast across all these different sectors, politics, the economy, culture. It makes it fascinating to try and understand right now, especially with its global role expanding.
Okay, so let's jump right into that political chessboard then. We've seen this powerful centrist bloc, the Centrão, right?
Yeah.
These parties known for being pretty pragmatic.
It's transactional, often.
Exactly. They've made a big move, starting with President Lula, and specifically, they resisted that opposition push led by Eduardo Bolsonaro.
Right. The one aiming to pardon the January 8th rioters and also impeach Justice Alexandre de Moraes.
So what does this alliance, this siding with Lula, really mean for his power in Congress? Is it solid?
Well, solid might be too strong a word long term. What it shows is the Centrão doing what the Centrão does best, prioritizing, patronage, influence, stability for their own interests over sticking to strict ideology. For Lula, short term, it's definitely a win. It bolsters his position in Congress quite a bit, but it also really frustrates the far right, naturally. And it highlights that even when things look stable on the surface, there's this underlying volatility. It's power sharing, not necessarily a deep ideological bond. That calculus could change.
And speaking of that side of the political spectrum, former President Jair Bolsonaro himself, he's facing some serious legal jeopardy, isn't he?
Oh, absolutely. He's currently under house arrest, waiting for that Supreme Court verdict.
On the charges related to plotting to overturn the 2022 election results?
Precisely. And we even saw, just briefly, his detention was lifted over the weekend so he could go to the hospital. Something about chronic complications from that stabbing back in 2018.
But this whole legal drama, it's not just contained within Brazil. It's got international dimensions.
It really does. And what's quite frankly remarkable is the level of support, very vocal support, from U.S. President Donald Trump. He's a major Bolsonaro ally, of course.
Right.
Trump's openly called the trial a witch hunt. He's even, quite surprisingly, admitted publicly to punishing Brazil because of it.
Punishing Brazil? How?
We've seen his administration take concrete steps. Sanctions directly on Justice Moraes, the one overseeing the case, and these incredibly steep 50% tariffs slapped on Brazilian goods. Lula's reaction was strong, as you'd expect. He called it blackmail, basically, against Brazil's sovereignty. This level of external interference is, well, pretty unprecedented.
Wow. So Brazil's caught in this really tricky spot. How do you defend your own judicial independence so fiercely, but at the same time, try not to let a trade conflict spiral out of control with your second biggest trading partner?
It's an incredibly delicate balancing act, a real tightrope walk. And, this situation also feeds into Lula's wider diplomatic game plan. He just had, I think it was a 30-minute call with Russia's Vladimir Putin. Apparently, Putin briefed him on the recent Trump-Putin meeting up in Alaska.
Interesting.
And amidst all this tension with the U.S., Lula makes sure to reaffirm Brazil's commitment to trying to find peace in the Ukraine conflict. He's pushing that Group of Friends for Peace initiative with China. So what you see is Lula trying very hard to keep lines of communication open with everyone, Moscow, Washington, Beijing, even when relations, like with the U.S. right now, are seriously strained. It's classic Brazilian foreign policy, trying to maintain autonomy.
Okay, let's shift from that global stage, fascinating as it is, back to a really pressing issue inside Brazil, public security, particularly in Rio de Janeiro. Reports are describing these medieval barricades built by drug gangs and favela strongholds. What exactly are these?
Yeah, it's quite a scene. They're elaborate roadblocks, thinking trenches, concrete walls, big metal obstacles welded together, hundreds of them. Their purpose is pretty straightforward tactically. Slow down or completely block law enforcement vehicles, giving traffickers those crucial extra minutes to escape during police operations.
But what's the impact on the people actually living there?
It's a terrible double-edged sword. On one hand, maybe they deter some of the really heavy-handed police raids, which residents often fear. But on the other hand, they literally trap people inside, reinforcing the gang's control over daily life. The scale is just immense. Police have these special anti-barricade units. They've apparently torn down over 2,500 of these things just this year.
2,500.
And get this, they hauled away something like 28,000 tons of debris. To give you a visual, that's apparently the same weight as 44 of those huge Christ the Redeemer statues.
That's staggering. So the government frames it as, restoring the rule of law, taking back territory.
Right. But then you have human rights groups pointing out, quite rightly, that this often just perpetuates a cycle of violence. It doesn't solve the underlying issues and deeply affects the communities caught in the middle.
Is there any positive side to this? Or just grim?
Well, it's mostly grim, but you do see these incredible flashes of resilience. There are stories of some favela residents actually taking these same barricades, these symbols of conflict, and turning them into canvases, using graffiti, street art, messages of peace. It's amazing. But it really throws that core question into sharp relief, doesn't it? How does Brazil secure its cities, deal with crime, without further damaging the social fabric in its poorest areas? It's a huge challenge.
A massive challenge indeed.
Yeah.
Okay, let's pivot now to the economy, another area where Brazil seems to be walking a fine line. The central bank's monetary policy.
The Selic rate.
Right, the benchmark interest rate. Still at 15%. That sounds incredibly high.
It is. It's near a two-decade high, actually. They've hiked it significantly since late 2024, and they're holding it there.
Why so high for so long?
Pure inflation fighting. The bank's economic director, Diogo Guilherme, basically said rates will stay this restrictive for a very long period. That was his phrase. They won't ease up until inflation, which is running at about 5.2% right now, gets much closer to their 3% target.
And are we seeing the impact of these high borrowing costs?
Oh, yeah. It's starting to bite. Economic activity actually dipped slightly, 0.1% down in June. The farming sector took a big hit, down 2.3%. So even though the overall second quarter GDP showed some growth, these numbers suggest the economy is definitely losing momentum under the pressure of those high rates. It's tough for businesses, tough for consumers.
But it's not all negative, right? There was some positive industrial news.
Yes, a really significant bright spot, actually. The Chinese automaker GWM Great Wall Motor just opened its very first manufacturing plant in the Americas, and it's in São Paulo State.
That sounds like a big deal.
It is. President Lula himself was at the inauguration. It's a massive $10 billion investment. That's about, US $1.8 billion, expected to create 2,000 jobs directly. And the plant's designed to produce 50,000 hybrid SUVs a year, mostly for export across Latin America.
So more than just jobs, it's a vote of confidence.
Absolutely. It's a clear sign that foreign investors, particularly from China, still see long-term potential in Brazil's consumer market, even with the current economic headwinds. It's a strategic win for Brazil's industrial base, too. And just briefly, another interesting move was global miner BHP selling off some copper assets to a local Brazilian company, Corex. That points to ongoing shifts and consolidation within sectors as well.
Okay, sticking with major industries. Energy. Petrobras, the state-controlled oil giant. There seems to be some tension over how oil prices are set for taxes.
Yes, the CEO, Magda Chambriard, is voicing some caution. There's a new formula coming in September 1st for setting the reference oil price used to calculate taxes and royalties.
And the government wants this change.
Right. The aim is to boost federal revenue, maybe by around $1 billion just this year, get more tax income.
But Petrobras isn't happy.
They're arguing it could make some new oil projects unviable, particularly the lower-grade post-salt fields. Those are the really deep, technically challenging ones. They're worried the new formula will make those specific projects uneconomical. So you have this classic tension: short-term government need for cash versus the long-term investment climate for a crucial industry. Markets are definitely watching how this plays out.
And another really surprising, potentially huge move in the agribusiness sector, the antitrust authority, CADE, they've ordered an end to the soy moratorium.
This one really sent ripples through the sector.
Yeah.
The soy moratorium, for listeners who might not know, it's been this voluntary agreement for years, since 2006, I believe. Major traders, ADM, Cargill, Bunge, Louis Dreyfus, Kafko, they all agreed not to buy soy grown on Amazon land deforested after that date. It was a key private sector environmental commitment.
So why is CADE stepping in now?
Their argument is that this voluntary agreement might actually be anti-competitive collusion. They've given the companies just 10 days to stop participating or face potentially heavy fines. And they're recommending a formal investigation.
Wow, so you have environmental commitments clashing directly with free market anti-collusion principles.
Exactly. It puts these big traders in a really tough position. And it signals a possible major shift in how Brazil balances environmental protection, particularly in the Amazon, with its economic policies.
Yeah.
The implications for global supply chains, for corporate ESG efforts, they could be massive.
Okay, let's round off this deep dive by touching on Brazil's, incredibly vibrant cultural landscape. There was a recent festival in Rio.
Yes, a cultural diplomacy festival celebrating 51 years of diplomatic ties between Brazil and China. It also coincided with the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II. It was this big open-air event, lots of Chinese and Brazilian music, dance, food, a real showcase.
And the significance of that, beyond just a party.
It's pure soft power in action. It's about building those people-to-people connections, that cultural understanding, which really helps underpin the huge trade and political relationship Brazil has with China, now its #1 trading partner. It reflects that broader geopolitical shift towards Asia and doing it through shared cultural experiences.
And speaking of big cultural events, Festa do Peão de Barrecos. It's coming up soon, right? The 70th anniversary.
That's right. Brazil's most famous rodeo and country music festival. It's huge. Apparently the largest rodeo in all of Latin America.
What are the numbers like?
It runs for 10 days, late August. They're expecting something like 900,000 people to attend. And the economic impact is estimated at around $1 billion. Just massive.
What makes it so special, so enduring?
I think it's how it perfectly blends that traditional cowboy, sertanejo culture with massive modern country music entertainment. It really preserves the heritage of interior Brazil. The fact that it's thrived for 70 years shows how modern Brazil can embrace global pop culture in its cities, but also deeply cherish and actually monetize the unique traditions from its heartland. It brings all sorts of different people together.
So, wrapping all these threads together, what we've seen today is Brazil constantly navigating these complex tensions, democratic stability versus political polarization.
Right, that push and pull between beating economic growth, but also enforcing fiscal discipline.
And the clash between environmental goals and free market ideas we just talked about, all playing out against this backdrop of really diverse, sometimes contrasting cultural identities.
It leaves us with a really important question, I think, for you, the listener, to ponder. As Brazil tries to manage all these challenges, all these opportunities, can its leaders actually keep both investor confidence high and maintain social cohesion over the long haul? Or is this constant tug of war going to force a more fundamental change, a rethinking of Brazil's whole direction? It feels like we might be watching a new chapter unfold.
Lots to think about there. Thanks for listening to this deep dive. If you enjoyed, like and subscribe to our channel. See you next time.